I want to bring in Chris Dols, Senior Cost and Value Engineer at the Army Corps of Engineers, New York District. It is his job to estimate the cost of large civil works projects. Chris, you are one of 2 million people who received a buyout offer. You did not take it. You're still working, but your job's definitely not safe. Explain this experience to us, and also explain it's not just we want you to be working because we want you to be employed, how important all these jobs are, jobs that we don't even think about.
Yeah, I really appreciate the opportunity to be here. Because you mentioned my agency, I am required by regulation to disclaim that anything I say is not the views of the Army Corps of Engineers. I am the president of my local union, IFPTE Local 98. And you mentioned my cost engineering role, but I'm also the district value officer, which I say because I think the pretense to a lot of these attacks is this notion that there's so much inefficiency. But mandated by Congress in everything we do are a whole bunch of efficiencies. My entire job, or the value engineering part of it, is actually, it mandates me and the Army Corps of Engineers to make sure that any large contracts we put out on the street benefit from an independent team of specialists relevant to the project to interrogate all the assumptions in the design to make sure we maximize the value for the American taxpayers.
Do you not feel like Elon Musk is telling the American people the opposite of that?
Of course he is. It's all a big lie to get away with the greatest theft in history. I mean, this is grand theft government. They're going after the regulatory role of the state so that they can make more profits. They're going after, the rights of workers to organize and their attacks on the National Labor Relations Board. They're going after all the things that make just living in our country something we can take for granted is going to be safe. The role of the Environmental Protection Agency to guarantee that our air is safe to breathe, and the FDA to make sure our food is safe to eat and our drugs are actually going to work. So
in the end, if these mass firings happen, it's not just your jobs, but isn't it the American people who will bear the brunt or the cost of this?
Yeah, and that's the real scam here. By making it about the supposedly lazy, deep state, federal bureaucrats, that narrative has displaced the truth. The truth is that this is a handful of billionaires who are looking to gut the services that all Americans depend on. When they come after our jobs, what they're really coming after is the services that we provide. Because there is no Social Security without Social Security workers. There is no veterans health care without the Veterans Administration. And they just see big, fat chunks of government resources that could be privatized, sold back to the taxpayers for 20 times the cost. That's their agenda. They're literally smashing up the very agencies that regulate them. The CFPB is responsible for regulating Tesla because it has a finance wing that, extends loans to their customers. They're deregulating themselves, blaming federal workers, and it's the American public that's going to suffer.
Where do you see this going?
So I get this question a lot. I'm strangely optimistic because all my coworkers are, first and foremost, we swore an oath to the Constitution when we started working for the federal government.
And you're not a political guy.
I mean, you have to be now. There's no sitting on the fence anymore. People who weren't political 3 months ago find themselves in the federal government, despite that we are officially apolitical servants. We find ourselves the victims of a very political attack by billionaires to completely remake and gut the public sphere. Our slogan, so I'm here in part because I'm one of the national coordinators of the Federal Unionist Network, and we're putting out a call to the broader public, SOS. We're putting out a distress signal from us as federal workers. We need to save our services. And that distress signal is directed at the broader public because it's not just about us, like I said, it's about the services that the American people depend on. And we're going to be organizing emergency responses anytime there are waves of terminations, all of which are expected to continue to be illegal. But the law, I don't think, is enough. I think we need mass mobilizations of the public and the federal workers themselves who are facing these attacks, but importantly, with the backing of the public in response every time this happens. I think it's going to make the political cost too high.
Do you think the public will join you when they see the impact? Because right now, when they hear the federal government is too fat, we need to have cuts, a lot of people say, yeah, that makes sense to me, because they don't yet know what those cuts will look like in their lives.
I mean, the notion that the federal government is too fat belies the fact that we are the same number of federal workers, roughly, as we were 70 years ago, while the economy has grown. So our share of the overall economy is actually smaller than it's been since the government grew in the middle of the 20th century. But if people, you could start by going to go.savepublicservices.com. That's the place where we're inviting the broader public to heed our call. Because when the next batch of 50 or 100 or 1,000 of us get terminated illegally, inevitably, by Musk, by D.O.G.E, we want the public to answer the call and join us in the streets to make the political costs too high for this administration to continue putting our future in Elon Musk's hands.
Chris, thank you for joining me tonight. I appreciate it. Chris Dols. When we return, the president made a whole bunch of promises when he was asked.